Good afternoon and welcome to ROM. My name is Julie Tomé, Science Educator at ROM, and I'm delighted you could join us for today's digital program. We'll start by taking a moment to acknowledge the land and its original caretakers. Royal Ontario Museum acknowledges that it sits on the ancestral lands of Wendat, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Anishinaabe Nation, which includes the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, who have been the original stewards of the land since time immemorial to today. Today's program explores the importance of photography in ROM's active fieldwork program and the ways in which images can be used to communicate science through art. This program is inspired by this year's Wildlife Photographer of the Year exhibition developed by the Natural History Museum, London. Today, we will bring you with us on the Canadian Rockies as we explore the work of ROM scientists do and how they document it with photography. I encourage everyone to submit your questions and thoughts via the Q&A feature during the program, and we'll do our best to address them during the program. Please welcome Jean-Bernard Caron, Richard M. Ivey, Curator of Invertebrate Paleontology at ROM. Jean-Bernard has been fascinated with fossils since childhood and is now overseeing research into the famous Burgess Shale deposit in the Rocky Mountains of British Columbia that is over 500 million years old. The ROM has been conducting research at the Burgess Shale since 1975, and its collections, which are held in trust for Parks Canada, are the largest in the world. Jean-Bernard leads regular summer fieldwork expeditions to explore new areas and recover Burgess Shale type fossils. And he will be sharing some of that work with us today. Welcome, Jean-Bernard.
Hi, Julie. Good afternoon, everyone.
Okay, so let's jump right in. Can you please tell us a bit about the research that you do? Where do you find the fossils and why are they so important?
Oh, absolutely. My field walk is at the Burgess Shale. This is a view of the Burgess Shale, the main quarry site called the Waka Quarry. And as you can see, it's in high in elevation in the Canadian Rockies. The original site is in Yoho National Park. And this site is one of the most famous for the understanding of early animals. Um, this year, we're actually celebrating 50 years of research at the Burgess Shale. So it's a big moment for us, for the ROM in particular, and our relationship with Parks Canada. Just to give you a little bit of background, a little bit more background about this site. This is the Burgess Shale at 506 roughly million years or half a billion years in age. And it is a site that is obviously a lot older compared to sites with the first dinosaurs, right? We precede dinosaurs by at least 270 million years. We're dealing also with just marine creatures at the time. So I mentioned Yoho National Park. And this is the location of the main sites. There are several sites, actually. Those are some of the historical sites, but there have been many other sites discovered by the ROM since. And the Burgess Shale is also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And since 1984, it is part of the Canadian Rocky Mountain Parks. So the fossils there are absolutely amazing. They are preserved with all their soft tissues that normally don't preserve. You have complete animals, whereas, in most cases, fossils are only parts of animals, usually the harder mineralized elements. At the Burgess Shale, you have complete specimens, but also preserving, the things like eyes, nervous tissues, guts, and so on and so forth. So this is really the episode that these fossils really record the episode that we call the Cambrian explosion, the origin of animals, and shows the great diversity of animals at that time.
Thank you. It sounds fascinating. Um, so we're talking about photography during field work. So what kind of camera do you use while you're doing your field work?
So yeah, I use very easy well easily pocketable cameras. So they are little pocket cameras which have zoom lenses, zoom ranges that can help capture some more distant objects. Also allow me to take some close-up images of fossils. And so I found, I used those two types of cameras in the past, and those are cameras are actually hard to find nowadays. If you want to buy one, are partly on demand again. So it's not, I'm not using larger cameras because of the weight of the lenses and the cameras, but also I'm not using smartphones either. So those are the type of cameras I use, fairly easy to bring with me when I'm on a hike in the mountains.
Nice. My son recently told me that he considers these vintage cameras. Um,
Vintage cameras, absolutely. Yeah, they do a great job though. And I was actually surprised trying to get a new one this year, and they're on back order and very difficult to find nowadays. So yeah, there's still demand for those.
yeah, they've become popular again. Okay, so what is the landscape like where you do your field work? You mentioned hiking.
Yeah, so the landscapes are quite amazing. Every day is a bit different, of course, but we are usually surrounded by pristine environment. We are within the national park after all, so everything is really pristine, and it's one of the oldest national parks in Canada as well. So there have not been a lot of human interferences in the landscape. It's hard to see actually in most of the vistas we are going there any evidence of humans, except sometime, of course, the highways, especially the Trans-Canadian Highway that goes through the national parks. So here is the view of Emerald Lake, for example. There's a lodge close to it, and those are other images from the Walker Quarry showing, the glacier in the background. Pristine forest again. And in most cases, when you walk in this environment, very few people would have been in that place. So it's very, very peaceful. Usually very quiet. You hear the sound of rivers and animals, birds, and the wind, of course. But often you're also at the mercy of natural disasters like fires, and we have had a number of fire events in the past 15 years or so. In fact, most summers there's at least one major fire somewhere in the Canadian Rockies, or in sometime elsewhere, and we just get the smoke accumulating in the valleys. This one was actually quite close, about 40 kilometers south of us. So that was a bit closer than what we wanted. And in fact, in some cases, the parks actually close entirely because of the risk, the fire risks. Here is another season where we had quite a bit of smoke. In fact, that was last year. And you can see that, sometimes it's actually hard to see the other side of the valley. Smoke is one issue, of course. The other is the fog. It becomes a bit of problem because then you cannot actually see the fossils when it's foggy. So you can it's also a bit hazardous, of course, when you're walking. It's a bit humid, and you don't want to walk on lichens, which are common in this area when it's humid. It's very slippery. But also, of course, it's a problem when you're trying to get out of the site or by helicopter, for example, when it's your last day and you're waiting for the helicopter to to bring all your equipment and fossils back to the valley. Well, sometimes it can be a problem. Um, that the I mentioned fog, but one of the things that happen in the Rockies is in the summer is that you can have really all seasons. You can have rainy days, cold days, You can have snowy days, and those days you don't collect fossils. You tend to migrate into the cook tent and try to warm up as best as you can, sometimes with hot chocolate or toast, and hoping for the for the sunshine to come. And when it comes, it's usually absolutely stunning. In the Rockies, you get these very bright colors. You can see the rainbow here. Um, One thing remarkable is, this environment above, near or above the tree line, is actually quite dry. So after a rainfall, usually the soil and the rocks get dry within a few minutes. So it's usually we don't actually lose a lot of time after a storm, for example. We just hold on, and just a few minutes later we can carry on. So that's basically the kind of environment we're dealing with. In the Canadian Rockies in the summer, you have to be prepared for the four seasons and equipped for it. But yeah, it's absolutely stunning every time I walk there. This is the office I have during the summer. I have definitely nothing to complain here.
Oh, it's definitely gorgeous. All right. So you've mentioned equipment, helicopters. How do ROM research missions run? What's involved?
So there's a lot of logistics involved before you can actually put boots on the ground. First, you have to plan the paperwork, the permits, and the funding. And once all of it has been, done, and then you're starting to put equipment together and equipment list. So we put our field gear together at the ROM. We ship it. We ship the gear on crates via pure later freight from Toronto to Calgary. Then we pick up the freight with our U-Haul van here on the back. You can see here that we actually getting a lot of the water jugs and the tools and so on and so forth together with the fossils. And this is a process that requires, often 1 to 2 tons of equipment to go to the field. And once we arrive closer to our site, we stay at a local hotel, usually around Canmore, and we start, well, to finalize the, the equipment, and sometimes we buy a few more things in the local stores. You can see pool noodles here. Those are actually very handy for packing larger slabs, and we also have like piles of newspapers that you can see at the front here from the local newspapers, which would be then very handy for us to pack fossils, and also a way for us to read the news as when we are in the mountains. Um, Now, no, we will not be able to walk there without the use of an helicopter to bring all this equipment, water and food, and to our field site. And so we use large nets that can collect some of this equipment, and then we have those nets um, located or positioned near the place where we live or we walk. And sometimes the landing areas are very narrow. As you can see, there's a little platform here, which allows the helicopter to land, but they are not they are basically pilots who have a lot of experience with this kind of terrain. So we rely a lot on those pilots to bring us safely to many of the places we want to explore. So it's sometimes quite tricky. We have, for example, situations like this where you have an older forest which burned maybe 15, 20 years ago, and you have all this skeleton of trunks of trees hanging there, and with the long line and the net, it can be quite tricky not to get stuck into those big trees. So the pilots really have to be very skillful when dropping our gear. Um, and this is, what a campsite might look like when the helicopter arrive. And this is after we start setting up the campsite. This is actually a picture from a site in Canadian National Park that is close to Marble Canyon. And the double rainbows probably gave us good luck because the following day we walk around the ridge of this mountain and we found an amazing new site, which is still has one of the largest concentration of fossils outside of Yoho National Park. So that was pretty exciting. So I mentioned hiking earlier. Once the campsite is set up, then we are ready to go. And so a lot of the exploration is done on foot. And so we can have, usually day-long hikes, looking at the rocks and looking at fossils that may be seen on debris on rock debris that are are very abundant, obviously, along these mountains. We always have to be wary of rock falls, and of course with changing weather. If there's a storm, then we have to be careful not to be in large gullies and or below cliffs. We always wear helmets and gloves when we walk on this in this particular type of slopes. And as you can see, there's a lot of rocks to look at, right? There's a lot of debris here below the cliff. So the first hint of fossils is really are going to be the first hints of fossils are going to be found in on these teleslopes. And sometimes we have to hike up to the top of the mountain or to the ridge. And guess what? There's still a potential for finding fossils, even though those were, living in the sea 500 million years ago, and those are seafloor sediments. Now they are more than 2,500 meters high in elevation, and that's due to plate tectonic and all these rock formations being uplifted higher in the mountains. So where they can weather, and sometime weathering, the action of rain and snow and so on and so forth help actually discovering new fossils. Without this natural processes, you will probably not be able to find them.
Wow. Okay, so our conversation today is part of programming for the Wildlife Photographer of the Year exposition. So do you see any wildlife during your fieldwork missions?
Yes, I'm a paleontologist. I work on on dead things and that were dead a long time ago and got preserved. But we also have a lot of animals and plants around us, and those encounters um, are not actually that common because above the tree line, there are relatively less animals living there. But with a bit of patience, and sometimes we span a few more hours and hours, and there are always animals that can be spotted. So I'm going to showcase here a few that we commonly see, and others are much much rarer. So the common ones include this white-tailed ptarmigan here. When I say, usually see them, well, actually, you don't see those ptarmigans very often. They are very cryptic. Their feathers are usually match the rocks and the landscape. And they are very discreet too. You can walk just sometime like 50 centimeters away from them, and you will not even see them, or even they will not be afraid of you. While there are a couple of chicks here of ptarmigans, of course, once I mentioned that there are two of them, so you'll see them now. But when you are in the field, and if they don't make any noise, you don't see them. And it happened a few times where we walked through a group, and yeah, it's only after we walked through the group that we realized they were around us, but very discreet. Um, Now, the much more very uncommon encounter is the wolverine. Um, this is not a good picture, but this is the camera. This is as much as I could get with the camera I had. This is a very rare animal. In fact, I showed this picture to Parks Canada, and they were very excited because they don't have many pictures of wolverines, even in the national parks, are very rarely seen, and they're actually walking very fast. This one was going, was almost running. Um, and so obviously this is one of the rarest animals in the national parks. But one of the most common one is the mountain goats. So mountain goats are very conspicuous, and they usually come around very curious about what we're doing. And huge families, huge groups gathering in some places. We when we spot mountain goats, um, we have to be careful because they tend to be curious, and they walk around sometime above us, and it's when they walk above us that we have to be very careful because they tend to what trip on rocks as well, and release some rocks that could fall below us, so on us. So we have to be careful. But they're very curious animals, very cute. And in the summertime, they change their fur from from the coat of fur from their winterish fur, which are kind of dirty, dark, to very nice and white and clean. So they look very clean right now because they lost all their winter fur. Um, Other animals, and those are only seen when we are in a tree line, within the tree line. The pin grosbeak, this is not very common. The spruce grass, which, those are a lot more common. And the grizzly.
Oh
Uh,
my.
Grizzly, well, we don't, in all my years of field work, I've really rarely seen grizzlies. And when we hike as a group, we don't see grizzlies. I mean, except once. But in this case here, um, one of them was around our campsite, and you can see the wires in front, the three wires. Those are electrical wires around our campsite that Parks Canada asked us to put in place before we start, our expedition. Um, and they have about 5,000 voltage. So they are supposed to be, protecting us. And but in this case, the bear, just seemed to be ignorant of these wires and just look around and, much on some of the roots around and left. But yeah, fortunately, we don't have too many of these encounters. And when we walk in the national parks, we have to make sure that all food, for example, is stored in locked and bear-proof containers, so there's no smell and so on and so forth. All garbage is locked into metallic cans. So yeah, we have to make sure that everything is as tight as possible in the campsite. And sometimes we have also other animals like the cow of there the moose female, the cow is that one was a bit more tricky because that one she uh she ran above the bear fence and ran through our campsite once.
Mm.
Um while actually we had a visit from Parks Canada officials, and so we're more than 12 in the campsite, but that didn't scare her. So unfortunately, she left. She probably thought like, "Wow, we are intruding her space," which was true. Um, and you can see these beautiful wildflowers here, which are fireweed, and they tend to like the soils that have been, recently, well, these types of soils um, which are in in mostly organic debris due to the recent fires. So they love this kind of environments, and this the landscape changed dramatically. You have these pinkish mountains just composed of millions of these flowers. It's absolutely gorgeous.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing those. So you mentioned you specialize in animals that are extinct, and you were up there to find fossils. So do you have any photos of the fossils to share with us?
Yes, I have a few fossil images here, and the fossils that we study tend to be no bigger than this particular fossil that you see, a trilobite. So they tend to be relatively small, and they are preserved on rock fragments, which can range from my fingernail to the size of a little table. Um, Now we're limited in terms of what we can carry out, of course, even with the helicopter. So there's no way we can carry something that as big as let's say, a car. So it's relatively small plates of shell that we can carry, and sometimes we find many of those on teleslopes, as you can see here. There's a new site where there are literally hundreds of these fossils on the ground, and you basically walk on them. And the purpose here is to collect some samples of the diversity that of the particular site we are exploring. So we will typically collect a few dozens per site if we have the opportunity. Um, and often these fossils have been there for a long time. I mentioned this is earlier that the first hints of fossils are along the teleslopes in those debris. But you can see from the lichens here on the right that no, this one was there for a long time. The fossil itself, it's just to the left of the chisel in that kind of top middle depression there. That's a fossil that is there, partially covered with lichens. And on the left, you can see that trilobite here that's been sitting there probably for a while too. The rock is pretty yellowish, orangish. And if it was a fresh rock surface, it would be more bluish, more bluish and gray. Um, Now, after we discover fossils from teleslopes, then we try to find where those rocks come from in stratigraphy. So in other words, in their proper stratigraphic organization or a relationship with the rocks that are around that are not collapsed. So we need to know exactly where they come from. And when we know when they come from or where they come from, then we start excavating rocks using relatively small light tools. This is an example of where we extract blocks, and then we will eventually split the blocks to search for fossils. Here's part of my group using hammer and chisels. And so you typically split the rock and you have parts and counterparts, so two halves of the fossil, and try to keep them together. Those are some of the tools, including jackhammers. And yeah, the fossils are amazing. Like those are, complete specimens. This is an example of a little arthropod, an animal related to shrimps and lobsters and insects today. Looks like a shrimp. Um, and many of the rocks that we carry have to be cut because they are too heavy or simply sometimes it's too fragile to do it by hand. So use a rock saw. Um, and of course, you cannot do this without a larger team. Those are some of my students or colleagues who have been joining me in the field. Um, and I mentioned earlier pool noodles, but this is an example of when we use pool noodle. When you have a larger slab, just put a pool noodle along the edge, and then strap it with tape, and then this is a very efficient way to carry the fossils by helicopter afterwards. Um, So yeah, at the end, we pack out all our specimen into cans, and everything will eventually go back to Calgary for shipping by per liter freight. But yeah, there are a lot of a lot of cans here that will be transported. And you can see some of these spoon noodles actually in some of the trunks that represent larger slabs.
Oh, so many buckets, so many fossils. Where can folks who are interested in your work learn more about it?
So there are a couple of places where people can learn about the Burgess Shale. One is online from home. You can check this website that we created with Parks Canada a few years ago, and it's in both English and French. So it's the biggest resource on the Burgess Shale that you can find. There are hundreds of images of fossils and representations of the fossils, artistic representations as well in the fossil gallery. But there's also in the history section really great sections related to the early finds, the historical finds, but also photography. There's a section about photography in the Rockies that I invite folks to look at. Um, and the other resource, and is here at the ROM, is really the Winter Match Dawn of Life Gallery, which is our newest permanent gallery that we opened in 2021 that covers the story of life from the origin of life to the first dinosaurs, and includes a section dedicated to the Burgess Shale, which is the most extensive exhibit on the Burgess Shale that you can find anywhere. And it showcased many of the animals that we find there, but also the research that the ROM has been doing. There's also a large diorama that people can explore. So that's one of the great learning experiences that people can do with the Burgess Shale when they are in Toronto. If people are interested, they can also go to the Burgess Shale during the summer and book guided hikes to Parks Canada and the Geoscience Foundation to actually visit the site, and encourage everyone to do that. It's really an amazing experience.
Wow, those sound like great resources. I have to say, I do have a soft spot for the Dawn of Life Gallery. It is one of my favorites. All right, folks. So we're gonna move over to question and answer. So just a reminder that you can submit your questions in the Q&A function in Zoom. We do have one question so far from Kevin, who says, "This is very interesting question. Is there ever any opportunity for freelance photographers to join on these fieldwork expeditions to capture any needed images, or would it only be the core research team? Thank you."
Thanks, Kevin, for your question. Well, typically I choose my crew to primarily collect fossils because we are limited in terms of the number of people who can join based on helicopter and space, and also limitations with the campsite. So typically, no, I don't have freelancers like photographers, but sometimes we do have journalists who join us in the field. We had Globe and Mail journalists, we had BBC, we had CBC, and others. But typically, those are for a few days, not for the entire duration. But there have been exceptions. We had a radio journalist who spent more time with us to record sounds, actually, not images, but to record sounds. So it's all sort of connected to the media, and there's people have been requesting, people in media have requested to join us to cover part of the field work. But otherwise, no, I don't typically have other types of freelancers.
Great, thank you. We have a question from Kathy, who asks, "It's been 50 years of ROM research. What are some of the major learnings to date, and what is your current research interest right now?"
Wow, I hope I have a few hours to talk about this. I would love to. Well, we have a lot of discoveries that were made. So, I mean, as Julie mentioned, we have the world's largest collection here. And so the main findings, I would say, in the last 50 years are the discovery of many new sites, new bird shell sites. Now, the original bird shell site is one location in Yoho National Park that people can visit today. There's another one, historical one, that is a bit older, that was found when the CPR was being built, and that is called the Trilobite Beds. It's close to field. But other than those two sites, there have been, as I said, more than a dozen new sites discovered by the ROM. Um, and so we have also increased the number of species, new species, known from the site, considerably, almost doubling, I would say, the number of species that are known from the Burgess Shale in the last 50 years. Not all of those are published yet, and we are still actively working on many new forms. And the third element of the ROM research really is the ability to revise the understanding of many species that were either poorly known or not properly known before, based on historical material. And this new material collected by the ROM really revolutionized our understanding of many animal groups, which include also our own group, the vertebrates. We found typically, a larger number of specimens and than what had been known before. So this additional material allows us to refine our understanding of the morphology, and as a consequence, we are able to better understand the evolutionary relationship of these animals, their ecology, and so on and so forth. So yeah, those are the main elements of the last 50 years, I would say, of research.
Yeah, I have to say, your team is very active. I'm always excited to see when we have, press releases about your latest work.
Actually, I can crack a news here that we have actually new species coming up in the next few days. So stay tuned. You may hear about it in the news. Yeah, it's a very exciting new fossil. When I say new, it doesn't mean like we found it yesterday. Uh, some of these fossils might have been in our collection for quite some time, but sometimes it takes all these years and new material to be able to describe things. But yeah, there will be a new species in the next few days, coming up from the Burgess Shale.
Amazing. Breaking news, folks. We have a question from Luke who asks, is there a working relationship between you and the photographer and the paleo artists who bring the fossils to life via illustrations after? If so, what's the professional relationship like?
So, in order to study the Burgess Shale fossils, scientists look at the specimens they have and start trying. They start to put some drafts of what the animal might have looked like, together, right, based on multiple specimens. Um, but it's only with the work of a paleo artist that we're able to reconstruct the animals in 3D and in ways so that people can actually start comparing with other fossils that we have. And so I've been working with several paleo artists in the past, including Daniel Dufault more recently from the ROM. And that relationship is usually, it's a back and forth between the artist and the scientist. And it's often a challenging exercise because the fossils are very flattened. So reconstructing 3D with flattened fossils requires numerous specimens preserved at different angles. Um, and so it's an iterative process. And after some time, we're able to, um, the image of the animal is finally can finally be reconstructed, um, based on that dialogue with the artist.
Wow. Sounds sounds like a really interesting process. Okay. One last question from Kathy, who wants to know, are there any specific questions? Oh, here we go. Hold on. What types of clues in fossils can give you an idea of color of the organism?
Well, that's we don't have actually any idea about what the colors of this symbol could be. There's no clues that we can use to say that should be that color or that color. So the color is really left to the artist to choose, and usually this is based on similar groups of organisms living today, which may display a range of colors. So the color that are being used by the artists uh, are of their own choosing, and that is the only part of the reconstructions that are not, I would say, scientifically accurate because we cannot. We represent colors um, in a way so that they 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 showcase, in fact, the variety of animal diversity there in a more visual way. But the morphology, however, it should be as accurate as we can, scientifically speaking. So that is something that I hope one day we are able to change that, but there's no way we can actually at this stage reconstruct colors.
Great, thank you. So it doesn't look like we have any more questions. So I will thank you all for joining us today, and thank you, Jean-Bernard, for sharing your team's work and experiences with us today. We look forward to staying in touch and hearing more about your work. We hope to see you again soon at another program online or in person soon, and have a lovely afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.